What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about how you can mix down your melodies, add different effects, and just make them sound cohesive all together and really great in the mix every single time. And I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite plugins that I use to get these effects as well. So if you guys are ready, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so for this one, we are actually going to be using a melody that I made in a previous tutorial. It was actually the last tutorial, but I'll go ahead and link it at the top of the video right now, so you can go ahead and check that one out first, and then you can see how I kind of mixed it down and made it sound even better. Alright guys, so let's do a demo of how this sounds really quick, just so you know that I know what the hell I'm doing, and I'm not just talking through my booty hole. Alright, so this is what it sounds like. Okay, so let's start jumping into this. So let's look at the bells first, because as you can see, I have a couple different groups here. We have the bells and the piano, which are just instruments that are layered together to give it a more unique and robust sound. So for the bells, what I actually did to each of the individual bells is I literally just EQ'd it. I didn't really do any of the effects straight on the bells. I did it on the group. So let's just look at this really quick. So for the first one, you know, we just got a little thing in here, and all we're going to really do is be chopping out the lows for this. Maybe certain parts that may be harsh. We may have also boosted some areas that we liked. So for this bell, for instance, I chopped out a lot of the lows, and this was the bell that took up the higher frequencies of the two bells. So that's why it's such a high cut, or we're cutting out so much lows in this one. And then I just want to get a little bit of the harshness out of here, and there must have been a harsh frequency in here as well. So nothing too crazy going on. You guys get the point here. And then with the next one, it's pretty much the same thing, except this one's going to dominate more of the low end for our bells. So we're not going to chop it quite as hard, pretty much, but not really as hard there. And then we're kind of boosting it a little bit here, getting rid of some of the harshness, and there must have been a bad frequency in here as well. All right, so that's it for the individual layers. Let's look at the effects that I put on them together as a group. So all together, this is what they sound like with the effects and everything on. And then if we were to turn that off really quick, it would sound like this. Big difference. It just sounds so dry, and it's just not there like it is when we turn the effects back on. So obviously you can tell there's some reverb in there, but let's go through each thing together. So usually when I'm grouping them, I'm going to do an extra EQ right here just to make sure for absolute certain that all the lows are chopped out. I also liked where this part sounded right here in the 2K range, so I went ahead and boosted that just a little bit. Next, I used a transient shaper, which is a little bit different for melodies, but since this was a bell, and bells kind of have those sharp transient sounds anyways, it's almost like a percussion that has more harmonics and dynamics to it. So I did use a transient shaper just to kind of get it to, you know, transient, just to hit a little bit more. So I turned that up, what is this at, 22%? So let's actually listen to it before and after that. So this is before it, and this is after. So it really just does just a little bit. It helps it kind of hit just a little bit more, a little bit nicer. All right, so the next thing in the chain is what we hear, right? It's the Valhalla reverb. And guys, if you don't have these exact plugins, the same rule still applies to any other reverbs that you might have. If you're using the Ableton reverb, or there's another brand that you prefer, the same things apply. I just want to give you guys a good idea of how to mix them down and make them sound full and more together so that they sound better in the mix. So with this reverb, we actually did quite a bit of delay here. We have 3 seconds of decay, excuse me, and we even did a good percentage of a mix here. So without it, it sounds like this, and with it, all right, it really adds that ambience in the background and lets it just draw out a little bit more so that it kind of fits in there and it's not such an abrupt stop. Okay, so next we have an effect rack on here with the filter diffuse delay type of effect on it. So if you can afford it, I would definitely recommend this effect rack. It comes with all these plugins right here, and you can just throw them into this effect rack and make your own style, or whatever kind of, you know, whatever you want to throw on your melodies, or whatever you want to put this on. You can use it for drums, you can use it for anything. And what's really cool about this is you also have all of these presets, and they're they're organized for us. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. So I pretty much always use a preset. There's going to be random times where I'll go ahead and put them in individually if there's something specific I want. But for the most time, I'm really just going through the presets, and that's why I love this so much. I don't have to do much thinking about it, but it is a little bit costly. Okay, so this is the melody without it, and this is with it. So it definitely gives it a delay to it, and it almost sounds like it's more spacey and adds more space to it. Okay, and the last thing we have on here, and something that a lot of people gloss over, is an imager. So I like to use this imager from Waves. It's called the S1 Stereo Imager. And this is just going to allow us to kind of add some width to it overall. So if we were to just go ahead and throw this all the way up and push it right to the front, you'll see right away. So let's do that really quick. You can see that it's actually putting it in a different part of the spectral image. So this gives a really good representation of what's going on too. So as you can see, this is the left side and this is the right side, and this is kind of where it's sitting in the mix. So as you move this, you can see it gets closer to the front, and if you move it backwards, it just pushes it to the back, and it's not as wide. So if you wanted to make something less wide, you could use a plugin like this as well. Okay, so that is all that we're doing with the bells. Whew, take a breather. But now let's move on to the next one. We got the pianos. Okay guys, I'm pretty much doing the same thing where I have each piano layer right here just has an EQ on it. And then the group is where I actually add all the goodness, the good sauce. So, you know, the EQs for the pianos are pretty much just going to be lows cut out because I liked how they sound. So that's the first piano. This is the second piano. This one I added a lot of highs to it. Okay, so now let's listen to the group right here, and we'll listen to it without all the effects on it first. And this is with the effects. So you can definitely hear it kind of warmed it up. It definitely got wider, and there's also a delay going on in the background. So let's check out exactly what I did to this. So again, I did an EQ first off just to make sure that all those lows are getting in there, just to make sure, just to be extra safe, okay? And you can see I'm cutting it off kind of at the 200 line. Okay, so the next thing we have on here is a cassette. What this is a vinyl distortion kind of a plugin. It warms it up a little bit, adds some width, and adds some texture to it. So it'll take like a sample that sounds perfect, right? It sounds really bleak, and what it does is it messes it up a little bit, makes it a little muddy, gives it a little bit of grit, so it doesn't sound so nice. Okay, so without it, it sounds like this. And with it, so you probably heard that it definitely got louder, but it definitely spread out. It got a little more gritty. We have a little bit going on here. You can see we got a spread knob on it, some static noise that we're not really using, but we're using some dynamic noise in here. It's stability, which is going to affect like how perfect it plays. So it might like scratch out or do something crazy like that when you use that. And that's basically all that's going on here. And this is a preset that I love to use all the time. Okay, so the next thing is our lovely effect rack, which I talked about before. And this one's another delay. So this is without it. And this is with it. And once again, we got the S1 Stereo Imager. So for this one, I believe we just push this forward ever so slightly. Yep, this one isn't really much. It starts off like this would be normal right here. And we just literally push it up just a little bit. Because usually with my piano, it's going to sit kind of in the middle. It's not going to be like super far to the forward or super far backwards. It's going to be that bass sound. So I want it to hold steady there. I don't need to make it super wide. Okay, so the next thing we have is our Vox, kind of like our choir in the background that's really just doing that little screamy like sound like that. So let's listen to it without the effects first. And this is with them. So you can tell it's a lot of reverb going on. And then some EQs, and that's pretty much it for this one, to be honest. So first, we're just EQing out those lows. We're not doing anything special. We're EQing out a lot of it, because as you can tell, this is in the higher frequency range anyways, so we don't need any of those lows anyway, so we're just going to take them out. Next, we have an audio effect rack, but literally what we're doing is we're taking a reverb channel and then a dry channel, and we're mixing them together with the volume. Now, I like to do this sometimes if I don't want it to affect the channel completely. I want to add another layer of reverb. That's when I would use something like this. So it's playing the regular channel with a channel of reverb underneath it. So there is a difference when you do that versus just putting it straight on the channel using the dry or wet. So I use it ever so slightly once in a while. So the dry channel is obviously what we've heard at this point, and then we have the reverb channel as well. And all we're really doing is putting a little reverb on it, almost 3 again like the other one. So pretty much the same here, 3 seconds here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're doing 100% on this because since we're mixing it in with the dry signal, we're gonna go 100% on the reverb so we can mix it in perfect. So without it, it sounds like this. And with it, that really does a lot for this one. This one for sure needs reverb. And if you haven't caught on yet, you pretty much want to put reverb on lots of your melodies. Like reverb is a goated type of effect that you want to put on. So when you have a really dry sound, like we just heard before we put on reverb, you're going to know right away. It's going to stand out. It's not going to feel cohesive, like it's blended together with the other melodies and things like that. It's going to stand out like a sore thumb, and it's just not going to sound great. So that's why I like to use reverb all the time on my melodies. It's goated. So definitely use reverb. Start getting used to using reverb. And then as you can see, I have another EQ here, and that's because I wanted to only do a certain section of reverb here. I didn't want to do all the highs or any of the lows, so I'm just using reverb for this section right here. And then the last thing we have is a stereo imager again. This one's pretty much in between the other two that we did. One of them was 1.3 and the other one was 1.8, I believe. So this one's at right about 1.5. It's kind of sitting in between them, not super far forward, but not super far back either. Okay, so the next thing we have is this violin one shot that I used right here. And we're not honestly doing much with this at all. Since it was a one shot, it was pretty much good to go already. So let's look at this really quick. So yeah, literally just chopping out the lows here. Didn't feel the need to boost it or anything like that. And then we put the S1 stereo imager in there again. And what are we using on this one? 1.65, so something like that. So it's not, you'll notice that I'm not putting anything in the same exact spot in the stereo field. Everything's a little bit apart so that it kind of gives it layers to the melody. Okay guys, and literally the last thing is just the texture that's going on in the background. It's just like, it says it's called Creepy Kids, but it's just like a kid laughing and making funny laughing noises. And literally all I'm doing for this one is just chopping out the lows and a tiny bit of the highs. I doubt this makes much of a difference regardless. So yeah, that's it for each melody, but there's some secret sauce that I want to show you now. So if you're still watching this, you came to the right place. Thank you for watching this far in the tutorial. And now we're about to go over some of the really good stuff. So on the melodies all together here, I went ahead and put some effects on them. Okay, so the first thing I did right here is I put on a cassette and a reverb, and I'm doing just a little bit of each, and all this is really going to do is kind of glue them together so that they sound really good together, so that there's reverb with everything and not just the individual channels. And the cassette kind of warms it up and brings everything together, also gives it a little bit of that gritty, distorted kind of a feel to help it sound less like pretty and perfect. So without that, it sounds like this. And with it, so you might notice a little bit of the reverb. You also might have noticed that it warmed up a little bit. But like I said, I'm not doing a crazy amount with these because I already went and did my effects on each of them. So this is kind of just to help them kind of be together. And once again, I'm using that warm keys setting on this cassette right here. I really love that setting and I use it all the time. And then for the reverb, I used a Valhalla room reverb instead of the vintage verb, which is more of like a roomy reverb. And then I use this utility right here just to kind of gain stage, okay? I turned it down 3 decibels afterwards just so I could keep it at the same level. The next thing I put on there is a Gullfoss. So you guys might have heard me talk about Gullfoss before, but I love this plugin. Gullfoss is awesome. It's literally just like an AI kind of a program, and what it does is it listens to the mix and it does its own adjustments based on what it thinks is going to sound better. And what usually happens is it gets a little bit brighter, it clears up some of the space, clears up a little bit of the muddiness, and just lets everything kind of shine out a little bit more. All right, and the last thing that we're going to talk about is this glue compressor. So the only reason that I have this glue compressor on here is to go ahead and sidechain it with the kick. Every time that kick hits, I want everything to duck just a little bit, I'm not going crazy with any of these plugins. I'm always doing just a little bit, and that's some sauce there as well. So literally every time the kick hits, it's gonna duck it just for a quick second. So let's go to a spot in the beat where the kick is actually playing, maybe like right here. You'll see it in action here. So this is without it. And this is with it. So you can hear it ducks the volume just a little bit when that kick hits. And man, it really, really allows that kick to shine right through it. I almost said shit. It lets that kick hit right through the mix when you do that. So this is a goated move that you should consider. All right, guys. So those are most of the plugins that I like to use on my melodies, how I use them, and why I use them. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this. And make sure to leave any questions in the comments below because I will get back to you and I will answer them whenever I get around to it. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this one all the way to the end. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already because we're uploading tutorials like this all the time that you're not going to want to miss out on. Also, smash that like button for me so we can get this channel moving. We are going to blow up and it's going to be very soon, but I need those extra likes just to help us get going a little bit faster. And I appreciate everyone for doing that so much. Anyways, guys, I'll be catching you all again in the next one. Peace out.